We're at a time in history after the Orlando Gay Club shooting Jihad. Now, let's cover quickly why that the homosexuals were picked out by a Muslim jihadist in order to be killed. Then let's deal with the question of why are we losing the Jihad war? Because in this Jihad attack, there were 50 Kafirs, non-Muslims, killed, and the death of one Muslim. That's a 50-to-1 kill ratio. That's called losing the battle. First off, the Quran condemns homosexuality, calls them sodomites, but it doesn't really give a penalty. But when we go to the Hadith, the traditions of Muhammad, the perfect Muslim, we find that there's plenty of reasons to kill homosexuals. If you find anyone doing as Lot's people did, that is being homosexuals, kill the one who does it and the one to whom it is done. Another hadith from Dawood: if a man who is not married is seized committing sodomy, he will be stoned to death. So, now we come to the Sharia. The Sharia is the codification of Islamic law in the reliance of the traveler. Kill the one who sodomizes and the one who lets it be done. May Allah curse him who does what Lot's people did. So here we have the fact that in Islam, the Islamic text for law call for the killing of homosexuals. So that's one reason the homosexuals are chosen to be killed. But let's deal now with the question of why do we keep losing this war? And if you want to know why we're losing the war, just look at what we say after something like this happens. This man is called a lone wolf. Well, he was not a lone wolf, this jihadist. He had as his companions Muhammad and Allah. Muhammad was the perfect jihadist. He was involved in exactly 100 events of jihad. And then Allah calls for jihad again and again in the Quran. So even if he was working by himself, he has the guidance of Allah, the guidance of Muhammad, and the guidance of 1400 years of history. So in Islam, there really is no such thing as a lone wolf. Then we have the stupidity of the thing, if you see something, say something. I see this every time I go to the airport, and I know this, that it's not the way it works. The way it works is don't see and don't tell. Because as we're seeing after this shooting Jihad event, there were people who worked with him who said, he talked a lot about hateful things. But why was he never called in for it? Because he's a Muslim. We don't criticize Muslims. They are a protected class. Another reason we're losing this war is we refuse to accept the Sharia for what it is. The Sharia is Islamic law, and it gets a free pass because it said, oh, the Sharia is just like, Jewish law or Catholic canon law. No, it is not. The Sharia calls for the killing of homosexuals. The Sharia calls for the punishment by jihad against the kafir, the non-Muslim, and it says that the kafir should not be a part of a legal system in which he has anything really to say. So Sharia is evil in part and evil in the whole of it. We should condemn Sharia as being a hate document. Then we have the other one. Oh, well, this is extremism. Jihad is not an extremist act because 24% of the Quran written in Medina deals with jihad. How can we call something which is a mainline doctrine extreme? It is not extreme. Jihad is normative. Jihad is the way that Muhammad rose to power. Then we hear the business of, well, they're extremist imams. There was an imam, and this is going around on the web now, who called for the killing of homosexuals and said it was an act of compassion. This man who said that is not an extremist imam because we've already heard that the Hadith calls for the killing of homosexuals and that the Sharia text calls for the killing of them as well. So there are no extremist imams. There are simply imams who teach the entirety of the Quran. Another reason we're losing is we're waiting for Islam to reform itself. How do you reform something? The Quran is perfect, complete, universal, and eternal. How do you reform that? Do you add something to it or do you take something away? Or do you just change it? But remember, it is perfect. So how can you reform something that is perfect? The Sunnah of Muhammad is perfect as well. So therefore, there can be no reform of Islam. And we're fooling ourselves when we say, well, Islam will be fine as long as it has a reformation. Islam will not be fine with the Reformation because the Reformation, going back to the prime source documents, has been done by the Taliban, Islamic State, Boko Haram, and many others. So there is no such thing as reform that's going to happen to Islam. Then we need to make something clear here. Muslims are not to be the target. We do not need to pick on Muslims or treat them as a hated people, but we do need to hold every Muslim responsible for what the Islamic doctrine says. Then we have the other one. Well, it's their religion, and we don't criticize religion. Actually, we do criticize religion as long as it's Christianity. But Islam is a religion and a political system. We don't need to criticize the religion, we need to criticize the political system. The political system is how it deals with a non-believer. Another reason we're losing the jihad wars is politicians. The politicians have created a law enforcement system which does not allow training on the doctrine of jihad inside of law enforcement itself. So we have our own law enforcement are flying blind because they're not allowed to study and educate themselves about the problem, which is the Islamic doctrine of jihad. Then we have the pathetic clergy, sweet, nice, kind, compassionate people who have no backbone and are silent in the face of the ongoing, everyday persecution of Christians in Africa and the Middle East. There are more than 50 people who have been killed called Christians in Africa, but our clergy, they never bring it up because they don't want to be bigots. Then we have the media. Do we need to spend much time on this? Because the media is now beginning to be involved in actual out-and-out censorship. The media only presents one side and one point. The media never connects the dots. And so therefore each jihad event is like, when it's big enough to be put in, it's like, oh my goodness, look at this. Well, don't be shocked and surprised. It's just like the other one. And then another reason we're losing the war is the universities do not allow debate on the subject of Islam. They don't teach the true history of Islam. Everything about Islam in our universities is just wonderful, you know. So our universities are selling us out. Now, one of the things that attempted to deter us from seeing that this is jihad is to call the killing a hate crime. But killing kafirs is not a hate crime. How do I know this? Because Muhammad killed kafirs. He killed Jews, he killed pagans, he killed Christians. So therefore, killing kafirs is not a hate crime, but a normative doctrine. Now, what's the solution for all of this? And there is a solution. Here's the solution on a bumper sticker. It's the Islam, stupid. We must face the fact that Islam has a doctrine of persecution of the non-Muslim. We need to teach this doctrine in our schools and educate our law enforcement with it. We need to hold every Muslim responsible for all of Islam. Everyone knows a nice Muslim at work or some equivalent, but do we ever discuss the 100 acts of jihad with them? Do we ever discuss the fact that the hadith call for killing gays? No, no, no. We don't bring up any of these bad things about Islam because we don't want to offend a Muslim. Well, every Muslim needs to be held responsible for the entire doctrine of Islam. Every Muslim, without exception, believes there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. We need to hold him responsible for what Allah has in the Quran. We need to hold him responsible for what Muhammad did. Then the other thing we need to do is realize that this is a political war, an information war. This is not a war to be won with bullets and bombs. We will defeat Islam not with F-15s, not with guided missiles, but we will defeat Islam by the simple way we defeat other political systems. We're in the middle of a presidential campaign now. I can criticize Hillary, I can criticize Obama, and I can criticize Trump. We need to criticize Muhammad in the same way. We need to use ridicule, irony, humor, and criticism of a political system. We need to use political tools against a political system. We don't need to kill people. We don't need to tell lies. We just need to tell the truth about Islamic doctrine. That's what we need to do. It's the Islam, stupid. Thank you.